Why your brain is addicted to chaos. The trauma bond that makes healthy love feel like a lie. The night you mistook chaos for love. If you leave, you'll regret it. Your heart pounded so hard it felt like it might bruise your ribs. You weren't thinking, you were bracing. The fight had spun into a cliff-edge ultimatum, and somehow that edge felt like gravity. Your body called it love, but calm felt wrong, like dead air after a siren. Here's the twist. Your nervous system learned this feeling long before you knew what romance was. A missing childhood pattern, a chemical loop, and a cultural script fused into one story. The stakes? Repeating cycles, health costs, years you don't get back. To see why stability feels fake, we need to go back. Chapter 1. The pattern you didn't consent to, attachment imprints. To understand why predictable care registers as boring, we need the earliest chapter, the one your body wrote before you learned words. Relationships start as nervous system lessons. If the person who fed you, soothed you, and looked at you with warmth also vanished unpredictably, came back distracted, or comforted one day and criticized the next, your body learned a rule. Don't relax, anticipate. Instead of connection being the baseline, anticipation became the baseline. That lesson didn't feel like a theory. It felt like survival. Inconsistent caregiving wires anticipation over connection because your brain cares more about detecting change than enjoying sameness. When a caregiver's availability swings, your nervous system toggles into watch mode, scanning for cues to predict the next shift. The timing was never clear, so you organized around uncertainty. That vigilance can look like maturity from the outside. Such a good reader of people. But inside it's a hum you can't turn off. COM doesn't register as safe. COM registers as missing data. Here's the slot machine part. When affection arrives on a variable schedule, sometimes attentive, sometimes cold, sometimes late, sometimes dazzling, you're dealing with intermittent reinforcement. That pattern is sticky. Because you can't predict the reward, your brain cranks up effort to chase it. Then, when the reward lands, it hits harder. You don't just receive care, you get a rush. The cost is that the system learns to prefer the chase over the steady meal. You become attached not to connection itself, but to the relief after tension. Anxious, avoidant, and disorganized attachment styles aren't fixed identities. They're survival strategies that made sense under pressure. Anxious strategies say, stay close, monitor, protest if they drift. Avoidant strategies say, turn down your needs, rely on yourself, closeness is risky. Disorganized strategies emerge when the source of comfort is also the source of fear. Approach and retreat fire at the same time, and your body stutters between bids for contact and shutdown. These are not moral failings. They're adaptations to an emotional climate. Your nervous system is always learning. In secure climates, safety equals predictability. The breath drops lower. Signals map to outcomes. In chaotic climates, familiarity equals chaos. So your body tags the known pattern, ups and downs, withdrawal and reunion, as home, even if it hurt. That tag lives below your thoughts. You can know logically that COM is healthy and still feel numb when someone is reliably kind. It's not hypocrisy, it's conditioning. Micro-stories tell the truth quickly. The unanswered text, your stomach flips, and you rehearse stories. They're losing interest. What did I do? The delayed hug. After a tense day, you reach, they freeze. 30 minutes later they soften, and your shoulders drop with disproportionate relief. The nice, after the storm, they explode at dinner, then bring your favorite snack, and you melt because relief feels like proof that love survived. Your body records the timing, not the content. The relief becomes the reward cue. What nobody knew then is that your adult type often starts as a body memory. It's less, I like tall, funny, driven people, and more, my nervous system recognizes the rhythm of inconsistency. It's why the person who texts back quickly feels flat, while the one who disappears and reappears glows with magnetism. Your system isn't evaluating values, it's matching patterns. Predictability doesn't ping your radar because your radar was trained to orient to threat, not care. There's a quiet irony here. The very capacity that kept you safe, anticipatory intelligence, becomes the trap. You get good at reading micro-expressions, tone shifts, and timing gaps. You sense the storm before the first gust. You micromanage context to prevent rupture. That effort makes you feel alive. Then, when nothing bad happens, you don't feel alive, you feel empty. The emptiness is the absence of threat, but your body calls it boredom. Meanwhile, childhood you negotiated micro-repairs. Maybe you learned to be extra pleasing to pull care back. Maybe you learned to withdraw to avoid shaming. Maybe you became the comic relief, the helper, the achiever. Each solution bent your attachment system a little more toward performance. Love became contingent, not ambient. So as an adult, unearned warmth feels suspicious. You test it because that's how your system checks reality. Push, see if it holds. Here's the hard part to name. The imprint is pre-verbal. You didn't sit down and choose it. You didn't consent to it. It's encoded in the timing of your breath and the pace of your heart. That means intellectual insight is necessary but insufficient. You can read every book on attachment and still choose the familiar chaos at 2 a.m. when your body wants the spike. Insight speaks English. Your imprint speaks adrenaline. Still, there's a kind of hope in precision. When you can map this, you stop calling yourself broken and start calling it learned. Learned opens the door to unlearning. Your system can learn that predictability isn't empty. It's oxygen you couldn't taste at first. But first, you need to recognize the slot machine and name it when it shows up in adult clothing. The partner who cycles hot and cold. The friend who love bombs then vanishes. The boss whose praise comes only after panic. Remember the micro stories. The unanswered text. Notice the surge, the urge to protest. The delayed hug. Watch your mind pair pain with sweetness and declare the sweetness deeper because it followed hurt. The nice after the storm. Feel your shoulders drop and ask, what would this nice feel like without the storm? That question is a wedge. It separates relief from love. It makes space for a new category. Care that doesn't require a bruise to feel alive. Here's where many people get tangled. But my childhood wasn't bad. It doesn't have to be catastrophic. You can grow up with well-meaning caregivers who were busy, stressed, emotionally inconsistent, depressed, perfectionistic, or intermittently attuned. The nervous system cares about timing and repair more than intent. If mismatches were frequent and repairs were late, unpredictable, or conditional, the imprint still skews towards scanning and chasing. Also, attachment styles aren't cages. They're starting positions on a field you can learn to play differently. Earned secure attachment is real. It begins when you stop mistaking familiarity for safety. It deepens when you practice getting bored without calling it doom. It consolidates when you pair connection with predictability enough times that your body lowers the alarm without a performance. What nobody told you, stability can feel like grief at first. Not because it's wrong, but because you're letting go of the roller coaster that gave you meaning. The grief is honest. The roller coaster wasn't just pain, it was identity. You knew who you were on it. The fixer, the fighter, the forgiver, the thrill chaser. Stepping off means meeting yourself without those costumes. That's disorienting. It's also the doorway. The imprint sets the stage, chemicals lock it in. Your physiology adds octane to the pattern, turning inconsistency into euphoria. That's why the chase felt like fate, and the calm felt like a lie. To see how your body amplifies the script, we have to step into the lab inside your chest. The brain's reward circuits, the stress hormones that sharpen edges, and the bonding chemicals that confuse relief with trust. Chapter 2. Chemistry that feels like fate, dopamine, cortisol, oxytocin. To understand why intensity felt like destiny, follow the chemistry. Start with dopamine. It isn't the pleasure molecule. It's the anticipation signal. Dopamine surges when something might happen, when there's uncertainty, when the outcome is variable, when your brain predicts a possible reward but can't pin down the timing. That's why the chase lights you up. When texts arrive unpredictably or affection appears in bursts, your brain tags the pattern as high priority. The possibility of connection, not the connection itself, drives the spike. Uncertainty is a feature, not a bug in this loop. Variable cues, 3 sweet days, 1 cold week. Create a variable ratio schedule, the same pattern that keeps people pumping slot machines. Your brain learns that effort might produce a jackpot at any moment, so it doubles down. Each intermittent reward strengthens the pursuit because the gap heightened dopamine, and the payoff stamped the circuit deeper. Maybe today becomes rocket fuel. You aren't weak. You're responsive to a powerful learning system tuned by unpredictability. Add cortisol to the mix, and intensity sharpens. Cortisol is your stress hormone, built to mobilize energy under threat or challenge. In chaotic relationships, your baseline stays elevated, raised alertness, shallow breath, tight muscles. When conflict breaks out, cortisol climbs. Your senses narrow. Then reconciliation hits, and cortisol drops. That descent feels like relief washing over your body, and relief feels meaningful. The mind calls that meaning love. but the body is just exiting a stress state. The fall is the thrill, not the cliff. This is the stress-love loop. Threat, pursuit, partial resolution, repeat. Each cycle pairs arousal with attachment cues. We're okay now. They do care. We're meant to be because we survived that. Your nervous system starts to rely on stress to feel connected. Calm doesn't register as connection because the loop taught you that closeness arrives after alarm. Without the spike, closeness feels flat. Your body asks, where's the swell? When it doesn't come, you mistake regulation for emptiness. Now oxytocin. It's the bonding peptide released during eye contact, affectionate touch, orgasm, and moments of trust. But oxytocin doesn't check for context. It binds to what's present. If oxytocin floods during relief after conflict, the body pairs the person with safety, even when they were also the source of fear. That pairing is sticky. Trauma oxytocin feels like warmth after a storm, amplified by cortisol's decline. Secure oxytocin feels like warmth in fair weather, steady and quiet. If your baseline is chaos, the fair weather version reads as background noise. This is why missing them can feel like panic. Withdrawal isn't only grief, it's neurochemical imbalance. When you step off the variable schedule, dopamine drops, cortisol stays jumpy, and oxytocin cues are absent. Your system reads absence as danger. Cravings show up, not just for the person, but for the relief their return brings. That relief used to normalize your hormones. Now, without it, your body screams for regulation and points to the fastest route. Go back. The mind calls that urge love. Chemically, it's homeostasis hunting a shortcut. Peak-trough cycles deepen over time. Highs get higher because you chase bigger signals. Bolder reconciliations, bigger gestures, longer gaps to intensify the reunion. Baselines sink lower because everyday interactions feel dull compared to the surge. This is tolerance. Like any escalated loop, it takes more volatility to feel the same aliveness. Meanwhile, your capacity to rest in steady connection shrinks. You interpret the absence of turbulence as disconnection, when it's actually the absence of adrenaline. Here's the kicker. If you grew up in a system where stress and care were braided, your body maps that braid as intimacy. So when you meet someone steady, your brain doesn't get the anticipatory ramp, cortisol doesn't spike, oxytocin rises gently and consistently. And that feels off. Not wrong in logic, but wrong in sensation. Your reference point is a roller coaster. A level path feels like standing still, even if it's carrying you somewhere real. We need to name a subtle confusion: intensity versus compatibility. Intensity is a neurochemical profile. Uncertain reward, stress arousal, relief bonding. Compatibility is a values and regulation match. Aligned pace, dependable repair, mutual respect. Chaos runs high on intensity and low on compatibility. Secure love runs low on volatility and high on compatibility. If your body was trained to equate how much I feel with how right this is, compatibility will look underwhelming next to intensity, even when it's precisely what supports long-term desire. Notice micro moments. They cancel a plan without warning. Cortisol rises. They return with a grand apology. Oxytocin floods. Dopamine spikes across both moments. Anticipation of loss, anticipation of reunion. So your memory tags the reunion as proof the love is deep. Meanwhile, the person who texts when they said they would? Your dopamine doesn't need to spike because there's nothing to predict. Oxytocin grows like a moss instead of a wildfire. You don't feel the drop because there was no surge. You call that boring. Your nervous system calls it regulated. There's also a cognitive overlay. Under stress, your prefrontal cortex, the part that weighs long-term consequences, goes a little offline. Short-term relief wins. That's why you find yourself answering a late-night message you swore you'd ignore. In the moment, the body wants the chemical correction. The mind then backfills the choice with a story. Our connection is rare. We're twin flames. The story isn't random. It protects the loop by giving it meaning. Without meaning, you'd face the raw chemistry and the cost it's charging your health. Speaking of health, chronic stress and intermittent reward aren't just emotional. Elevated cortisol over time affects sleep, digestion, immune function, and mood. Dopamine volatility can flatten your everyday pleasure. Food, work, friends feel muted compared to relationship spikes. Oxytocin dysregulation can make solitude feel unsafe because your body leans on partner cues to settle. This isn't moral, it's biological. Seeing it clearly cuts shame and opens choices that strengthen your system rather than burn it. So how do you tell the difference between trauma oxytocin and secure oxytocin in real time? Listen for the context. If the warmth arrives after a threat, if your shoulders drop like you just outran something, that's relief bonding. If the warmth arrives during a normal Tuesday, if it feels easier to breathe without any performance, that's secure bonding. Relief feels dramatic. Security feels ordinary. Ordinary is not an insult. It's a nervous system basking in consistency. Here's a helpful reframe. The quiet you mislabel as no chemistry is often the absence of cortisol, not the absence of connection. Your body isn't bored, it's detoxing. When you first stop riding the spikes, you'll feel flat. That flatness doesn't mean incompatibility. It means your reward system is recalibrating its sensitivity. Give it time with consistent cues and gentle novelty, and dopamine will stop demanding fireworks before it lets you feel spark. Chemistry explains the intensity. Trauma makes the bond hard to break. The same learning mechanisms that helped you survive, seeking patterns, pairing relief with closeness, become the glue. Naming the molecules doesn't make the pull vanish, but it lets you say, my body is asking for a rush, my life is asking for a route. In the next chapter, we'll see how power and intermittency turn these molecules into a tie that resists logic, and why knowing the mechanics helps you quietly loosen it. Chapter 3. The mechanics of trauma bonding, intermittency, and power. This was the moment everything changed. Not the apology, not the promise, but the quiet after the storm when your chest finally unodded. Relief felt sacred. That feeling is the hook. Trauma bonding isn't a character defect. It's a learning loop that exploits intermittency and power. When care arrives on a variable schedule under uneven power, the nervous system fuses fear and closeness into one experience. Then it defends that fusion like it's oxygen. Start with the idealize, devalue, reconcile cycle. At the beginning, you're idealized. They mirror your dreams, speak your language, move fast. It feels like recognition. Your system upgrades them from stranger to sanctuary. Then the devalue phase slips in sarcasm, contempt, withdrawal, a sudden chill that makes you question what you said or who you are. Your body spikes into alarm. Finally, reconciliation, apologies, tenderness, future talk. The contrast creates a high. Your system tastes reunion as proof of depth. It's not depth, it's contrast. Love bomb to silence is a power move even when it's unconscious. The acceleration at the start compresses boundaries. You disclose more, commit faster, and orient your schedule around their availability. Then silence. Your mind scans for the rupture point. In that uncertainty, you're more suggestible. When contact returns, the body relief binds to the person who just ended the alarm. Power concentrates with the one who controls the on-off switch. Even if they insist, I'm just busy. Access becomes a currency you'll pay for with flexibility, explanations, and self-doubt. Intermittent reward cements pursuit, because effort becomes meaningful under variable ratio schedules. The slot machine doesn't pay every pull. It pays just enough to keep you there. In relationships, just enough can be a weekend of closeness after a week of ambiguity. The payoff backdates value onto the ambiguity, like a gambler telling themselves the dry spell mattered because the win finally came. You don't just chase the person, you chase redemption from the last low. Gaslighting intensifies the bind. It can be blatant, that never happened. Or subtle, you're too sensitive, you misunderstood. Why are you making it a big deal? Your memory of events becomes the battleground. To keep the bond, your mind sacrifices certainty. Cognitive dissonance kicks in. If they love me, they wouldn't hurt me. I'm hurting, therefore, I must be misreading. You edit your own experience to preserve the relationship. The brain protects the worldview that promises belonging, not the facts that threaten it. Fear, relief pairing runs underneath like a metronome. A raised voice, a slammed door, a delayed reply, a glance that signals withdrawal. These cues trigger fear. The counter cue, soft eyes, a hand on your back, a ping on your phone, delivers relief. The pairing conditions your body to interpret the reliever as savior. The catch is that the savior is also the source of threat. That paradox deepens attachment because the stakes feel existential. I need you to stop my pain. The more you need them to relieve it, the more power they hold. Shame binds the system tighter. When something hurts, shame whispers, "It's my fault, I can fix this." That belief offers a sense of control. If your behavior caused the coldness, your behavior can bring warmth back. Repair becomes a performance. Be nicer, smaller, sexier, less needy, more available. In the short term, The performance sometimes works because any warm response feels like proof you've found the lever. Long term, you erode self-trust, and the relationship becomes a classroom where the lesson is earn your air. Microstory. After a cruel jab at the party, they show up with flowers and your favorite tea. Your body inhales the scent and exhale returns. You watch their face, softer than last night. Tears come, not only from pain, but from relief. You accept the gift and the embrace. Your system learns the wrong lesson. Cruelty is followed by care. Therefore, care is meaningful because it follows cruelty. Without naming it, you just reinforce the schedule. Power doesn't just live in personality. It lives in access to resources and alternatives. Whoever has fewer social anchors, less money, less housing security, less immigration status, or more stigma has less exit power. Intermittency hits harder when leaving jeopardizes survival. That's why some bonds feel unbreakable. They're welded by practical constraints as much as chemicals. If your world shrank during the relationship, friends drifted, hobbies faded, power consolidated further. Isolation is a feature of control, not a glitch. There's also the loyalty trap, sunk costs. You've invested time, identity, dreams. Walking away threatens the story you told yourself about who you are. Resilient, forgiving, loyal. Cognitive dissonance again. If I'm loyal, I don't quit. If I leave, I'm disloyal. Therefore, I should try harder. The cycle becomes a self-esteem economy where each reconciliation buys back your sense that you're a good partner. Meanwhile, the baseline keeps sinking. What nobody knew at the time. Your nervous system is keeping score, not in words but in thresholds. Each crisis raises the activation needed to feel close. Each reconciliation raises the bar for what counts as repair. Normal kindness can't compete with crisis-grade affection. That's why healthy attention feels underwhelming when you're trauma-bonded. It isn't underwhelming, it's just not performing at stadium volume. You might wonder, but what if they're struggling? Shouldn't I be compassionate? Compassion without boundaries becomes complicity. Trauma bonding thrives in the gray zone between empathy and self-abandonment. Repair requires accountability and change, not just remorse. Performative remorse looks tearful, but resists patterns. Functional repair maps the behavior, names the impact, installs new guardrails, and proves consistency over time. If the cycle keeps resetting to promise, rupture, grand gesture, you're not in repair, you're in reruns. Meanwhile, something else is happening inside. Identity merges with the role the cycle assigns you. Rescuer, redeemer, weather forecaster. The cycle gives you a job. The job gives you purpose. Purpose feels like love, especially if earlier life taught you that love equals usefulness. When a relationship makes you essential through crisis rather than chosen through calm, the bond tightens around duty. You'll mistake exhaustion for devotion and hypervigilance for care. This decision would haunt you because the cycle gradually narrows your window of acceptable emotion. Joy feels suspicious. When's the drop? Sadness feels dangerous. Will it push them away? Anger feels forbidden. Will it trigger the devalue phase? You monitor yourself to keep the schedule stable, which means the schedule is controlling you. That's power, when your internal state orients around protecting access rather than protecting health. Here's where it gets practical. To loosen a trauma bond, you don't fight the chemicals head-on, you interrupt the schedule. Predictable routines starve intermittency. Externalize contact, no contact or low contact when necessary, with clear time frames. Replace isolation with anchors. Friends you see every Tuesday, a group that expects you, a therapist who tracks reality with you. Name behaviors, not feelings, silent for 3 days. Sarcasm in front of friends. Apology without changed timing. Facts cut through gaslighting fog. Create a relief alternative. If relief is the glue, you need new sources of relief that aren't tied to the person. Ice water on your face to engage the dive reflex. Walking until your breath drops. Calling someone who won't analyze the bond, but will sit with you through the urge. Ritualize the wave. This is the 20-minute surge. It will pass. When you don't pair the drop in anxiety with a reunion, the association weakens. Slow work, steady results. You'll also need a shame antidote. Self-respect scripts. Short, calm statements you repeat and enact. I don't explain my boundaries more than once. I leave when I'm mocked. I repair with people who repair. These scripts convert identity into action. Each time you act them out, you rebalance power toward yourself. Not dominance, autonomy. While the bond forms in private, culture teaches you to crave it. Movies sell intensity as destiny and reconciliation as proof. Songs frame jealousy as passion. Friends say, if it's not hard, it's not real. The myth launders the cycle. In the next chapter, we'll step out of your living room and into the stories that trained your nervous system to confuse drama with depth, and why calm started sounding like silence instead of love. Chapter 4. How stories train your nervous system, culture's passion myth. While that was happening in your body, something else was shaping your expectations. The stories you grew up swimming in. Culture didn't invent your imprint, but it gave it language.